told him that their frustration level had passed the tipping point into desperation. He moved faster. "This whole thing is hopelessly messed up," Lionel said. "Maybe Chris got picked up by the cops. Maybe you're just paranoid," Barry soothed. "This was supposed to be easy money, my ass." Jonathan was at the back of the house now, the black side as he thought of it, and it was time to prepare the doors for entry. The patrons had stashed Thomas Hughes in the basement. In this part of the country it was probably called a storm cellar, or maybe a root cellar. Constructed entirely of stone, from the outside it could be accessed through two heavy wooden doors that sloped at a shallow angle from ground level. When the time came, those doors would be Jonathan's point of entry. Pulling his cell phone from its pouch on his vest, Jonathan flipped open the cover and viewed the image transmitted by the spaghetti-size fiber-optic camera he had inserted between the doors. In the light cast by the single dim light bulb inside, he had difficulty making out any real detail, but he saw what he needed. Their precious cargo hadn't moved in the last half hour. The fourth-year music major lay naked on the basement floor, his arms, legs, and mouth bound with duct tape. "Hang on a little longer," Jonathan whispered. The kid had no idea that he was moments away from rescue. For all he knew, this was all he'd ever see again. Even after he was safe, there'd be no way to erase the trauma of these past 4 days. Whoever Thomas Hughes had been before the kidnapping would be forever changed. It would be years before he'd feel real joy again, and chances were he'd never rediscover the trust he once felt toward others. The speaker bud in his right ear, the one not occupied by the patrons, crackled again. "Sit rep, please." Apparently 2 minutes had passed since they'd last spoken, and Jonathan's airborne partner, Brian Vandemulebracke, boxers, wanted a situation report per their standard operating procedure. They spoke on encrypted radio channels without worry of casual eavesdroppers. "I'm preparing for breach now," Jonathan said. Still using night vision, he removed 3 GPCs, general-purpose charges, from his rucksack, one for each of the door hinges on the right-hand side, and a third for the heavy-duty padlock in the middle. Constructed of C4 explosive with a tail of det cord to ensure proper activation, GPCs were as malleable as modeling clay, infinitely reliable, and effective as hell. The phrase "shock and awe" would take on a whole new meaning when the blast waves were focused on a room as small as the cellar. Lionel said, "Let's cut off the kid's balls." Jonathan felt his stomach drop. "What?" At least Barry was horrified. That was a good sign. "You heard me. We'll cut off his balls and send them to his father for jerking us around." "That's sick," Barry said. "What's sick about it? He's going to die anyway." "Don't say that." Jonathan pressed his transmit button again. "See our friend Chris yet? Looks like I'm going to have to pull the trigger on this thing." In his ear, "Sorry, boss. I got nothing. Nearest headlight is 2 miles away and heading in the other direction." "I copy," Jonathan said. "Just calm down in there." Lionel was explaining the way of the world to his little brother. "You seriously thought we were keeping him alive? Why would we do that?" "Because they paid the ransom." Lionel laughed. "That's why Grandma always loved you best. You were always the sweet, naive one." With the breaching charges in place, timed to fire 500 milliseconds apart, Jonathan took a few steps back from the doors and glanced again at the image on his phone. Thomas Hughes had shifted from his stomach onto his side, his knees still drawn up, just as they'd been in all the photos they'd sent. Jonathan scowled. If the kid hadn't had a chance to stretch in 4 days,